Hello everybody and welcome back to the podcast Headstrong. This is a podcast where I sit down with people to talk to them about things that have happened in their lives, in their careers, but importantly I want to talk to them about where they've struggled to try and help you get on a path to becoming headstrong. This series is exclusively about rugby, and I still had a few more guests that I wanted to speak to after the Rugby World Cup. In this episode, I sat down with Nick to talk to him about his career with Team USA and a number of other teams spread around the world. Nick was born in New York, but has taken an interesting path into the world of rugby. So I thought it was a really interesting conversation to have with Nick. I hope you enjoy this episode and his experiences at the Rugby World Cup. Well, Nick, thank you so much for having a chat with me on this episode of Headstrong. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to me. Where are you right now?
I am in a place called Vannes in Brittany in France, finishing the season as a medical joker in the Pro D2.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you go straight there after Japan?
No, I had a whole week off in New York, so I went home and spent some time with family, which is nice. Saw some friends, and then came on over to France.
If you're happy with it, let's go right back to the beginning then. You were born in New York, and you are an American national by birth. Yes. How does one get into the game of rugby in the USA?
Most guys sort of fall into it at like a later age. Like a lot of guys, these guys from my age sort of started when they were 18, when they went to university, and maybe they had played another sport in high school. I was a football player and a wrestler, American football. And then I went to college. I went to Notre Dame, which is a big football school, and was nowhere near good enough to play for their football team, and kind of wanted to do something in my spare time. So like rugby was like a social sport. I was new on campus, and I was looking for a new group of friends. So a lot of guys just like myself, just sort of jump into it on a whim, just to like, get that sort of, I don't know, like just get your yayas out when you're studying all the time. Like you want to run around in a park and throw a funny ball around and have some fun, meet some new people. So that was my motivation for starting, was just to do something physical. So you knew what rugby was out in America. It's not like it's some sort of social taboo, or it's not like an unknown sport. People do know about the sport. It's because America is so big. I think people have heard of the sport of rugby. They probably don't have any idea what it entails, sure. unless they're sort of in that world. I think when you go to college, like almost every college in the U.S. university has a rugby program, whether it's super social or somewhat serious. Like they're on every campus. So when you're at uni, like there are rugby guys around. There's a rugby team, and maybe you catch a game every now and again. So it is sort of in I think the place where it's most well known in the American cultural consciousness is like at the university level. Okay, sure. Is that quite an obvious way to look at it, your approach to it, in terms of you can't get in the football team, but you still want to do something quite physical and quite demanding in terms of a team sport, so rugby's the next option? Yeah. I mean, there was that. I think I wanted a different group of friends, a new group of friends. Yes. And it honestly seemed like the rugby guys had a lot of fun. They threw some legendary parties, and they played some sports, and there was a bond there that I think was special that I missed from high school sports. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to try it out at least. Did you ever have any kind of rivalry between the football team? Because obviously one of you is wearing a lot of protection, and no, man. Like the football team in Notre Dame is like a multi-million-dollar a year operation, and we were just a bunch of idiots running around on not even a field, just out in the grass in the quad. Yeah, just trying to trying to get money for a ball and for goalposts and things like that. So it was a very different world. We were club athletes. We were, guys studying all sorts of different stuff, just coming out twice a week to throw a ball around and play some games on the weekend. So what was that standard like then at college in terms of rugby ability and coaching and stuff? Well, I got lucky, I think, because when I went to Notre Dame, it was the first year where they were allowed to be back on campus as a club sport. They had been kicked off campus back in the 90s for whatever reason. So we had a full-time coach, this guy Sean O'Leary, who was the U.S. under-17s coach. So he had a bit of experience, and it sort of got better and better each year we were there. So like by the time we were in my senior year, my fourth year at uni, we were 15th in the country, I think, in our rankings, and played in the top division. And that level, I mean, it's probably nowhere near the standard of, say, like Bucks rugby in the UK, but it's a good standard of rugby. Most teams take it pretty seriously, I would say. But yeah, I mean, it really was more about the social aspect of it, enjoying yourself, learning the sport, than it was about high performance.
So it got to a point, though, in your career where you were enjoying your rugby so much and you had the social aspect of it, but it got to a point where maybe this was becoming a career pathway for you. So how did that first start, and how did you eventually manage to get out of America in terms of, sourcing, a line of income fundamentally, because rugby can do that for a number of people. So what was that like?
So I graduated. I went to grad school in California. I was playing club rugby there, and that year I sort of got this shot to play with like the USA A team on tour. And I jumped at that. I played a couple games for them. I didn't play particularly well, and I don't think I was at like the international level at that time. But sort of off the back of that, about a year later, I was working in New York, and I met. I was playing with an Italian guy named Manny Cipriani. We were playing for a club called New York Athletic Club, which is like an old sort of legendary men's club in the U.S. And he was like, "Nick, if you want to go play in Italy, I know a lot of people. Maybe I can help you out." And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Playing professionally is something I always wanted to do. I knew if I wanted to play for the Eagles, I'd have to probably do something out of the box because my opportunities at the time were really limited. So he sort of went silent on me for a couple months and then called me up one random day in May and was like, "Hey, Nick, this team, Lazio, wants to offer you a contract for next year." It was, nothing money. It was like €1,200 a month, I think, and a house and a car. And it was the opportunity to play full time. And I was like, yeah, I absolutely want to do that. So
nice.
Quit my job and moved overseas 2 months later.
Wow. So that went pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it was in the back of my head as something that I thought I could do. It's something that I knew if the opportunity came up that I would definitely jump at it. Financially, it made no sense. I had a very good job.
What were you doing?
I studied engineering in grad school. I was working as like a design engineer. It was my master's was in earthquake engineering. So that was sort of what I was focused on. It was a good job. It was pretty dry. A lot of computer modeling, that sort of stuff. And I don't know. Moving to Italy, learning language, and playing a bit of rugby sounded a lot more fun at 22.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, so how did your family deal with it? Did you have a girlfriend at the time as well? Because obviously moving from, the east coast of America straight over to Italy, there's a massive time difference. Well, you were in California, you said, actually, didn't you? So,
well, I did my master's in California, then I moved back to New York. So I was working in New York.
So how did your family and friends take that? Obviously supportive of your career choice, but
yeah. I think my parents were a bit shocked that they wanted me to do it. And my dad said, "Nick, if this was me, I definitely wouldn't do it, but sounds like something you would do. So good luck." And I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. I actually just broken up with sort of a long-term-ish girlfriend. So the timing worked out pretty well with that. And then, I mean, I think my friends had known that like they knew I loved rugby, and it was just this thing that I do outside of work and really try to focus on with the spare time that I had. So when this came up, I think they all knew like that I wanted to do it and I was going to do it. So it was tough at first, but it was definitely an easy choice for me to make.
Yeah, sure. When you said as well that you've played for a number of clubs and in a number of leagues in your career, but you did end up over here in the UK playing for the Newcastle Falcons, and then you also went on loan to Doncaster. And then actually signed for them the season after. How did you find the Premiership at the time?
Well, I mean, I jumped basically from like a pretty low level of rugby in Italy to, the Aviva Premiership, which was, a huge jump in standard and professionalism. It's really no comparison. So for me, it was really tough to get up to that level very quickly. It like legitimized my my decision to go to Italy was getting that deal with Newcastle Falcons. But it was awesome. I mean, like the level was insane to me. Like I never played at such a fast or physical level, and I knew I needed to like really step my game up as quickly as possible. But it was an incredible experience, and I didn't play much at Falcons, but it basically, signing that contract got me back into the USA squad, and allowed me to do what I always wanted to do, which was play for the Eagles.
So you played for a number of leagues in different countries. Where have you found the rugby to be most physical and most challenging?
Honestly, the championship in the UK is incredibly physical. Like I just think like, guys in the championship are just massive, and they don't try to run around you. They just run through you. So like every single week, it's just so physical at set piece and like so physical around the fringes of the rock. Like you just have to be ready to put in big tackles every week. It's slow. I mean, it's slow rugby, but it is incredibly physical. Well,
you're a big guy yourself, so I can't imagine that would have been too challenging.
Well, I think I'm pretty skinny.
Oh, really?
compared to a lot of big second rows and props out there. So
okay.
I don't know. Maybe it's a mindset. I guess I've gotten used to it. I've gotten used to it over the years. So maybe I am one of those. Maybe
what I see.
I just don't want to admit it.
Yeah, sure. Maybe what I see as big as well, you probably see as just average in the rugby world.
Could be. Yeah. Well, I mean, the last couple of weeks, the Pro D2 has shown it's pretty physical as well. It's fast. It's a fast. Well, compared to the championship, it's a pretty fast standard of rugby. So
yeah,
we'll see how the season goes.
So you received your first USA cap in 2012. What were those emotions like when you?
Well, my first cap actually came in 2016. I guess 2012 I played
it was the juniors.
Oh, it was the juniors, yeah. So the A side, and that was incredible, obviously. And I think at the time, I thought I was way better than I actually was. So I probably just sort of in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm going to just keep on getting caps and just play for the US, and it's going to be great. And then after that tournament, just basically didn't get called up for another 4 years. So to get back into it in 2016 after signing with Falcons, I mean, that was like a dream come true. And I got my first cap I played my first game. I played against New Zealand Maoris, my first game in Chicago in November 2016 on my birthday. And it was like, just one of those incredible experiences. I had my whole family there. A bunch of my friends from my uni were there because Notre Dame's close to Chicago. My uni coach was there. And yeah, I mean, I remember just being a ball of nerves from like Wednesday to Sunday and not really being able to digest what was happening, and then going out there and playing against New Zealand Maori facing the haka, and we got our asses kicked. But just like, I don't know, one of those things I'll never forget.
I can imagine that's a pretty incredible experience, and having your family there on your birthday. I mean, what are the chances as well?
Yeah, it was. It was pretty cool. It was very cool. I mean, my brother flew out from Boston, surprised me, and it was. I mean, everything. No, actually, I don't necessarily believe that everything happens for a reason, but it happened that way, and I'm incredibly grateful that I got my first cap when I did, because I was ready for it.
And I suppose that you'd had a chance to mature in literally mature, and also rugby terms. You'd matured as a player as well. Did you ever speak to your dad again about that and go, look, Dad, I've now made it? Do you know what I mean?
No, I mean, there was never any, I think my dad was always really supportive of me doing this. He just thought, he's a pretty standard guy, like, grew up, started working right after college, been working for the family business for a long, long time. And I think it was just a bit of a strange decision for me to go overseas from his point of view. But he's always been hugely supportive, and he has sort of realized, I remember, at the World Cup this year, speaking to him, and I was telling him, like, I might, because I thought I was going to retire. I was like, I might go play in France. I got this opportunity, and it sounds really exciting, and money's good. And he was like, go play. He was like, go play in France. Like, amazing. Go do it. It sounds amazing. You're going to have a great time. Like, why not? Give it another couple of years and see what happens. So, I think, he's always been super supportive.
Hi, everybody. Sorry to interrupt the podcast. Just a quick word from our two sponsors. Headstrong is very fortunate to have found two amazing sponsors and supporters for Season 2 of Headstrong, the Rugby World Cup special. forming a brilliant partnership between Headstrong, our chosen charity Restart Rugby, and themselves. They cover between them all aspects of global insurance, and both have strong historical ties to the wider rugby and well-being communities. Ascot Group is a Bermuda-domiciled global specialist in insurance and reinsurance, built on a foundation of underwriting expertise, but with a culture of collaboration, dedication, empowerment, and accountability that is the fabric of the company. Their integrity is reinforced by a strong track record and dedication to clients, brokers, and partners. For more information on Ascot Group, visit www.ascotgroup.com. BMS are an entrepreneurial, agile, specialist insurance and reinsurance broker that prides itself on their reputation for exceptional client service and position as one of the leading global brokers. For more information on BMS, visit www.bmsgroup.com. Now, back to the podcast. So just rewinding there briefly, you said you had to wait 4 years from that USA Juniors kind of cap to your full call-up for the Maori, against the Maoris. Mm-hmm. How did that play on you mentally, that kind of waiting period? What did you learn about yourself and your rugby? Did you have to build up some sort of resilience? And how did you deal with it as well?
Yeah, I mean, 4 years in a rugby career is a long time. So when I was playing in Italy, I was so far removed from the U.S. national team that, I couldn't really just sit around and think about it every day. I had to, focus on my life and my rugby in Italy and enjoying myself. So I think, I knew in the back of my head, like I remember watching the 2015 World Cup, and I was playing in Florence. I was having a great time. And I remember thinking if I ever get that opportunity, I'll be ready. And it was so far away from where I was at the time. I was playing part-time, basically. I had a couple jobs on the side, and, I was staying fit and staying ready. And I was like, if I ever get the opportunity, I'll be ready to go, and I'll make the most of it. So I think there definitely was some resilience built up over those years. I had varying levels of success in Italy. And just it's getting that contract with Falcons immediately thrust me back into the picture for the U.S. I remember they announced the contract on a Friday, and I think it was Saturday, that week. I got a Twitter direct message from the guy who's the performance director for the U.S. He was like, "Hey Nick, do you want to come play against Italy this week?" It was a summer tour before I had gone to Falcons. And wow. I was so taken aback. It's literally, they announced it Friday, and I was actually on my way to Newcastle when I got the message. I think I just landed in London. I opened up my phone, and I'm like really? That's all it takes? I get this contract, and all of a sudden, I'm back in the team. So I called him, and I was like, listen, I'd be honored, but I have to say no. I want to, get stuck in here at Falcons, and I want to see, I want to get my level up before I come in and play for the U.S. now. So
wow, so that's all it took, just to
drift it off there. Yeah, man. It took me signing the deal, having it being announced, and then literally the next day, after 4 years of no comms, a Twitter direct message, come play for us against Italy, and I had to say no. I had to be like, no, not yet, guys. I'll come on my own terms. That was a tough decision to make too, because I was like, what if that's the only opportunity I get? But I knew if I were to come back in, I wanted to be the best I could possibly be, and I knew that after a preseason with Falcons and a couple games with Falcons coming in November, I'd potentially be 10 times better than I was at that time. So definitely the right decision. Yeah, definitely, it was worth waiting for then. Yeah.
So let's rewind to July.
Sure.
The group that the USA are going to be in. You got England, mm-hmm. France, Argentina, and Tonga. So mm-hmm. pretty much one of the toughest groups probably mm-hmm. at the World Cup. And you're playing a match against Canada. Mm-hmm. Only kind of 10 minutes left, I believe.
Yeah.
And you got the Rugby World Cup in 2 months, and you suffer an injury. Do you want to just tell me what happened?
Yeah, well, I dislocated my ankle coming down from the lineout. Sort of in the 73rd minute, I think it was. And I mean, I just remember hitting the ground and looking down at my ankle and just seeing the bottom of my boot on my right ankle facing back up towards me. And I was like, that's not good. I mean, they came on the pitch, they pulled my ankle back into place and then carted me off. And at the time I was immediately pretty devastated. A couple of my teammates and some of the Canadian guys who I played with were, coming up to me and saying, "Oh shit, man, I'm sorry." I mean, I was pretty certain at the time that, this would be like a 6-month injury. So it was very tough to deal with at first. I think, the next day the team left for Fiji and I was basically alone in Denver, staying at the team hotel, like by myself, just waiting to get an MRI and to find out what the story was. So I think the MRI was on like a Tuesday. So I'm just lying there. My girlfriend had left. She had gone back to the UK and just sitting in the hotel for 2 days, just stewing with ice on my foot, just waiting for the verdict. Doctors were saying, "Oh, like if, there's nothing broken, then there's potential for you to make it back, etc." And then they're also like, the odds of nothing being broken is 1 in 2,000. So not good.
So where did this leave you mentally? Those 48 hours on your own, isolated, what were your kind of inner thoughts?
Oh, I mean, there were a lot of tears. I think the first day, I was lucky I had my girlfriend and a couple friends with me at the hospital. But I sort of put myself in this place where I was in like a holding pattern, right? Like you can't do anything with the situation, right? You don't have an answer. So if you go too dark in that moment, if you start thinking like, "Oh, I'm definitely not going to the World Cup. Like this is it. Everything I've worked for is like, it's not going to happen." Like that takes you to a horrible place, when you really don't know. So I tried to keep myself. I think I watched the whole Band of Brothers series back, front to back one day in this hotel room, just like didn't move. And was like, this is good. This is keeping me alive. So just like trying to stay in a place where, you don't know yet. So you try to stay as positive as possible.
Were there any specific techniques that you were using, or you just kind of said to yourself, right, let's not think the worst yet, because I don't know the results of this?
Well, I mean, you talk about there's nothing I could do in that situation that I can control, right? And I've worked with sports psychologists over the years, and the big thing they talk about in rugby is controlling the things you can control, because there's only certain things that you can't control, and a lot of things are just out of your hands. And what had happened to my ankle at that point, I had no control over what had happened, right? So there's no point in me dwelling on what was going on. Like I literally had to wait for a diagnosis. Like I had no information about what was on. I had no doctors with me. I had no med staff with me. I just had a bag of ice, and I was sitting there. I was like, well, you know what? Maybe. My mind was just like, maybe I could do it. And if there's a chance I can do it, I'm going to do it. I mean, it was a hard space to be in. It was definitely the most challenging thing I've dealt with in my rugby career, was compartmentalizing that, over those 2 days and trying not to get too dark. I'm lucky that I had the support of my family and my friends to talk to, and my teammates as well.
So the World Cup kicked off on the 20th of September. At what date did you know you were like, I'm going out now? I know that I'm going. So when was that?
So I got the MRI that Tuesday, and I remember lying there. They were doing the MRI, and the doctor kept on asking for more and more scans of my ankle. So I was in there for like 45 minutes, and I was thinking, like, is this a good thing or a bad thing that he's asking for more and more angles? But within half an hour of the MRI being done, the radiologist had called the surgeon and was like, listen, you don't have any broken bones. You don't have any cartilage damage. All your ligaments are torn, but, there's potential for you to get back in time. Targeting 8 weeks to the day of him saying that was the England match. So Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if I could make it, but I was lucky that USA Rugby took care of me. They put me up in a hotel like 50 yards from this rehab spot that they run in Superior, Colorado, and they allowed me to rehab 4 or 5 hours a day. And I think after maybe 2 weeks of that, again, the first, maybe after 2 weeks of that, I sort of had it in my mind, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'll be healthy for the World Cup. And I had spoken to Gary Gold, the U.S. coach, and he had told me that, Nick, if you're healthy, we're going to bring you. So, keep us posted. I think the moment that it was real for me was when I finally got on the plane.
Yeah, for sure.
It was like, I think I had my first 2 days running were like the 2 days before I got on the plane. And they were like, yep, that's good enough. You're coming with us. So, and to hear that was, incredible.
Well, I'm sure a lot of that rehabilitation as well was mental, as well as the physical, because, if you're saying to yourself, right, I can make this and I'm going to get up and go attitude, and you're in that facility as well, working on your body 4 or 5 hours a day, then you were doing everything possible, both mentally and physically, to get back in time for that England match.
Yeah. It was, looking back on it, I don't know, it feels like it was easy because like I knew exactly where I wanted to go. Like I knew exactly what I had to do. Like there was no distractions, and I was lucky to get into that environment where there was no distractions. There's one other guy, like Mikey Teo, who had a foot injury, who was doing a couple weeks rehab with me. So there's 2 of us in a hotel room for about 2 weeks. Literally all we did was we'd get up, we'd eat, we'd go to this rehab place, we'd do 2 hours, we'd eat lunch, and we'd go back and do another 2 hours, and we'd sit in the pool in the afternoon and ice and rest. And there were no distractions in life. And I was able to focus 100% of my mental resources on getting better. And yeah, I mean, it was tough, but I had such a clear goal. Like, I don't think there's a time in my life where like I've literally had such a clear objective. Like I need to have my foot ready to run on September 26th. I need to be good enough to play against England on September 26th. And that was the only thing in my mind. So it was really, I don't know, it was an exercise in goal setting, and it was, it was so focused that it was, I wasn't thinking about anything else.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So let's look at the Rugby World Cup now. Sure. Despite the results, did you enjoy it, first of all? What was it like out there? You said earlier that it was pretty mentally and physically exhausting in terms of travel, and it's quite an overwhelming experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was overwhelming. It was, of course I enjoyed it. It's my first World Cup. It's the thing almost any rugby player wants to do with their careers, play in a Rugby World Cup. So it was incredible. It was exhausting. I mean, we traveled so much. We did our first week camp in Okinawa, which is 1,000 miles from the mainland, and then we were all over Japan. We were in Fukuoka, we were in Tokyo, we were in Kobe, Osaka. So a lot of travel in between. Not a lot of time to train. A lot of people pulling you every different direction when you're in each city, and friends and family. But yeah, as an experience, it was awesome. And the Japanese people did such a good job hosting it. You felt so welcomed everywhere. And so like the whole country was like knew who you were and knew what you were there for. And the whole country was behind you. It was really, really something else.
That's so great. In that final match against Tonga, obviously you knew you guys were heading home, but did you think that you might get a win out of that? I mean, it was genuinely quite close in terms of scoring.
Yeah, our focus going into the tournament was we wanted 2 wins out of the tournament.
Yeah,
we wanted to beat Tonga, and we wanted to push France and Argentina really hard. So I think we were disappointed with the way we played, especially against Tonga. I think we weren't particularly careful with the ball. Set piece wasn't as good as we wanted it to be. And our tackling just wasn't great. So I mean, there's a number of technical reasons why we lost that game, and Tonga played really well. But that was a game that we were targeting to win, and I think maybe in the back of our minds We expected to win, which isn't, a good way to go into a game. And, on top of that, we're coming off 4 days rest from Argentina. So, another tough task, and Tonga had a full week to prepare for us.
Looking at the England match that you guys played, when you played them and you came off that pitch, obviously I'm biased, but how did you feel playing them? Did you know that they were a pretty strong team and you were like, well, yeah, I can see them making it to the final? How was it actually playing against them?
I've honestly, I've never played in a game where I felt so thoroughly dominated by an opposition. Obviously we had our game plan going into that, and we expected to be way more competitive in that match, but they were so clinical at set piece. Their scrum absolutely destroyed us. Their driving maul was very good, and on top of that, their execution was just excellent. So we didn't really have many answers for them. And I remember after that game, it was my first World Cup game. I had a lot of family and friends there, so it was an incredible experience still, but we were dominated by England, and I remember thinking after that game, like, this is a team that could beat the All Blacks. A team that could potentially win the World Cup.
Mystic Meg was Nick.
Yeah. At the time, yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, did you watch the rest of the World Cup then? Did you watch the games, or did you take less interest?
No, I absolutely watched the games. It's like, it was such a spectacle, and there was so many good games on offer. Like, you couldn't miss it. I had to wake up at some weird times when I was back in New York, but definitely worth it. Japan, South Africa, incredible game. Like, the whole tournament was just awesome.
So you were happy with the result? Obviously not from a USA perspective, but you thought it was a great tournament all round? Yeah,
incredible. I think the only thing you could look at was they had to cancel a couple team games at the end, which I couldn't imagine what that would be like. For Canada, Italy, New Zealand. Who else? I think, one more team, obviously. Namibia. Yeah, Namibia was the other team who got their game canceled.
And the England-France game as well.
Oh, and the England-France game. Yeah,
it would have been a great match.
I was reading something where it was 2015 in Ireland's last pool play game. They lost 3 key players from injury.
Yeah.
So and then it went into the quarterfinals and lost. So, those are really important games, and they very well could have changed the outcome of the World Cup. To play only 3 games in that period where another team has to play 4 I think it's a massive embedding. That's the one thing you could look at and be like, it's a bit of a shame, but at the same time, there was a massive tsunami, and public health is obviously way more important.
Exactly. I always think that, yes, at the end of the day, rugby is just a game of sport. Obviously, there's a lot of passion behind it and there's a lot of money behind it, but there were lives at stake as well. So it's worth noting. But obviously, congratulations to South Africa. Good job. I'm gutted, of course, but great. It was a great tournament.
It was meant to be.
Exactly. The stars aligned almost for them. So what does the season hold for you then? What are your aims and goals? And is 2023 in your sight?
I don't know. That's a long way off. Right now, I think what I've enjoyed, at least the last month or so, is having gone to a World Cup, is I feel like I have this big sort of animal off my back now, where I'm just able to enjoy life and rugby, separate from any goals I may have with the US team, etc. So I'm going to give what I can to Van here. I'm going to work my butt off for them. My girlfriend's moving over in about a month to live with me, which is going to be amazing, and we're going to try to enjoy a little bit of French life for 6 months and see where that goes. Hopefully have a good enough season and maybe stick around here or ideally head to the top 14, which I know would be very tough, but hopefully a possibility.
What's your French language like?
It's pretty bad. I think the fact that I speak Italian helps.
True.
I think I'm understanding more than I would if I didn't speak Italian. But I had a lesson yesterday, and I'm trying to pick up as much as I can. I think that's really important when you're in a place to try to learn the language. I'm lucky my missus speaks French.
That's lucky. She'll be doing the ordering at supper.
Yeah. I think that might actually hinder my learning, because I'll just probably rely on her to do almost everything.
So we're coming down to the end of this, Nick. I asked these two questions to all of my guests. The first one being, you've obviously taken quite a unique approach in terms of your career to rugby.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So you've taken quite an interesting pathway to success in your rugby career. But what would be your piece of advice to anyone getting into rugby and thinking about progressing into the sport?
I don't know, man. It's tough. You really got to take things day by day. I think one of the best things I can say is, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow. Whatever you want to do, it's not going to happen tomorrow. So take from that what you will. Like, you really have to focus on what you can do that day to make yourself better, and then try not to worry about where you want to go, and just enjoy yourself in every moment of it. Because it is, rugby's, a great sport. It'll allow you to travel, allow you to meet some really great people all over the world. So as long as you're enjoying yourself and getting better, it'll eventually happen for you, I think, if you keep the right attitude. But it's easy to get caught up in your goals and stress out about day-to-day things, selection, etc., bad performance. It's probably harder to just go with the flow.
And finally, Nick, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
It's resilience, right? It's the ability to know where you want to go and the ability to get there. So it's controlling what you can control and keeping a positive mindset, even when things can get overwhelmingly negative. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Well, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me. Enjoy France, enjoy the culture, and most importantly, enjoy the food.
Yes, I am.
And
I get a day.
Safe travels to your girlfriend coming over, and I hope you guys have a great season.
Cheers.
And hopefully, we'll see you in the World Cup next.
Yeah, we'll see. Thanks, Lewis. This is a lot of fun.
Well, guys, that is it for this episode of Headstrong. A huge thank you to Nick for taking time out from his busy time in France to talk to me on Headstrong. Thank you as well to you for having a listen to this episode and also any other episodes in this Rugby World Cup series. These episodes are always live, so please listen to a number of my other guests that are always live on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I hope you enjoyed. There will be a couple more episodes before Christmas, before we break, and we look into Series 3 and 4 and see what happens next year on Headstrong. So keep an eye out on social medias. We're on Instagram and Facebook.
My name is Damien Hopley, Group Chief Executive of the Rugby Players Association. Restart is the official charity of the RPA, and the charity provides crucial support to current and former professional rugby players suffering from serious injury, illness or hardship. Since 2005, Restart has invested over 1.7 million into player welfare and support by funding medical treatment, rehabilitation or disability support, financial support and emotional support by providing a 24/7 confidential counselling service. And we're the only body in English rugby that invests in mental health support. 1 in 4 people in the UK will be affected by mental illness in any year. Rugby players are no exception, and often the pressures and strains that act as a catalyst to mental health issues are magnified for professional athletes. Players often find it difficult to cope with the transition out of rugby, and the reality is that over 60% of players reported mental health issues post-retirement, and over 50% of players take 2 years or longer to be in control of their lives post-rugby. In 2008, the Rugby Players Association and Restart launched a 24/7 telephone helpline and counselling service to provide vital mental health support to those players and families that were facing struggles. 42 current and former players accessed the confidential counselling last year. More than 140 players have accessed the counselling service over the past 3 seasons. Every year, Restart spends up to £60,000 on our confidential counselling service to help support our players. Without support from donors and fundraisers, Restart would simply not be able to continue this vital support for our players. Sadly, these mental health issues can lead to devastating consequences. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 45 in the UK, and rugby players are not immune. It's great to see the players talking more openly about their mental health struggles within rugby and after they finish playing. Thank you for all your support towards Restart. Without people like yourselves, we could not help players and their families in the way that we do. So thank you all very much.